Welcome to Unholy Inquiry, where each tale leads you deeper into a labyrinth of mystery waiting to be uncovered. This time, join us as we delve into Hercule Poirot and the Puzzle of the Pale Suitcase, a fan-crafted story that pays homage to the genius and sophistication of Agatha Christie's iconic detective, Hercule Poirot. We are thrilled to have you with us on this captivating journey. Share your thoughts, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you spot any details we missed, your feedback is invaluable. Together, let's continue to shape even more thrilling enigmas. Chapter 1. A Suitcase at Midnight. A blood-curdling scream pierced the stillness of the midnight air, echoing through the derelict platform of Houghton-on-the-Wold train station, stirring the very shadows that cloaked the quiet English village. The sound, raw and unbidden, sent ripples of trepidation quaking through the night as a solitary figure, lantern in hand, stumbled upon the source of the chaos. A pale suitcase, dust-laden and incongruous against the cobblestones, unceremoniously abandoned on the platform. The flickering gaslight cast long, grotesque shadows, morphing the hard edges of the scene into something sinister, while the chilling wind wove through the trees, whipping leaves into a swirling dance around the discovery. Inspector Hercule Poirot arrived moments later, his usual crisp suit and waxed mustache sharp against the murkiness that hung heavily about the station. He had been summoned by the local constable, a junior officer whose inexperience was palpable. "It is a matter of urgent import, Monsieur Poirot," he had said, his brow creased with concern. Now, faced with the suitcase, Poirot felt the weight of his own evolution as a detective shift. There was a tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife, and he understood that this was a puzzle demanding immediate dissection. He turned first to the suitcase, scrutinizing it with the depth of his azure eyes. "Do not touch it unless you wish to contaminate the evidence," he said, his voice a keen blade of authority, silencing the constable who stood beside him, unease radiating off his skin like steam. Poirot lifted the lock, testing it with delicate precision. With a satisfying click, he swung the lid open, revealing an array of items: clothing hastily folded and stained, a tattered letter whose contents made the air feel charged with pressing implications, and a dusty silver locket that glinted with a warning in the dim light. The inspector's mind raced, connecting threads that only he could see. "The color of this suitcase, it suggests urgency or desperation," he remarked, contemplating the item as the constable fidgeted with his cap. "What of the letter? Your apprehension is palpable. Speak, mon cher." "I found it on the floor beside it," the constable stammered, reluctantly handing over the crumpled letter, the ink smudged as if written in haste. Poirot unfolded it, discerning the hurried scrawl. "You cannot escape what you have done. Time is drawing near." His brow furrowed further, and he peered at the inspector. "What does it mean, sir?" A palpable weight filled the ensuing silence, punctuated by rustling leaves and the distant rumble of thunder, a storm breaching the horizon. "It means," Poirot intoned carefully, "that someone possesses knowledge that may implicate our suitcase's owner in a crime." A flicker of suspicion grazed the inspector's thoughts, the outline of a shadow darting through his memory. With familiarity born of many cases, he considered the faces within the village, each individual a potential suspect, masked by their mundane routines. "Did anyone else see this suitcase?" Poirot prompted. The constable shook his head, brows knitting together in confusion. We were on patrol. Only Mrs. Hargrove, she lives by the station, saw me rush out. She claimed to hear, well, something, though she does not elaborate. The inspector's heart raced, for Mrs. Hargrove's eccentricities had been the talk of the village. Her excessive passion for local gossip could yield insights or ruin, a double-edged sword. Poirot's mind deftly wandered the attributions of behavior as he weighed the implications of Mrs. Hargrove's testimony. What had she heard exactly? The flicker of her verdant gaze crossed his thoughts, a riddle wrapped within her curious demeanor. In the distance, muffled steps announced her arrival, her voice a quavering impracticality churning the dark night. Oh, good heavens! What has happened? The woman appeared before them, her wool coat pulled tight around her, as if bracing against unseen daggers. "I say, Inspector, was it a train accident?" she inquired, her voice laced with feigned innocence, yet squirming beneath the gaze of both men. Poirot's instinct told him that her concern was far too theatrical, mirroring precisely the aloofness of a performer feeding on audience tension. "Madame Hargrove," he said, "would you be so kind as to stumble not so inelegantly into the play? What did you hear?" Mrs. Hargrove blinked, and her expression shifted, myriad emotions tumbling like leaves in the wind. I thought I heard, how can I say it, like a whisper, or perhaps a quarrel." Her eyes flitted around, nerves straining under pressure. "You know the young couple, the Thompsons. They often pass the station, late at night. I once saw them in heated discourse." Could it be them? The constable mused aloud. Poirot dismissed the thought, sensing something deeper beneath Mrs. Hargrove's mask. But no, Poirot pondered, his thoughts threading together crucial details. The discarded letter, with its ominous tone, the urgency of the suitcase, and this tangled relationship enveloping unwelcome nights beneath half-lit lanterns. Suddenly, Mrs. Hargrove gasped, clutching the pendant she wore, fingers trembling nearly imperceptibly. "Oh my, was that a scream?" The tension escalated, her eyes flashing wildly. Poirot straightened, suddenly aware. It was not merely the suitcase and its secrets, it was the very characters surrounding him that were a part of this web. Before he could articulate his thoughts, another shriek pierced the night. A woman's voice split the air. "They've found her!" Poirot's heart thundered as he turned to the constable, whose wide eyes mirrored his racing mind. They rushed to the edge of the platform, where shadows conspired to hide the truth, every heartbeat like a drum, resounding through the hushed glow. Someone had been hiding something far darker than the suitcase unveiled before them. The night felt thick with dread, pregnant with unearthed mysteries, as Poirot stepped closer to the murky edge. This was just the beginning. Chapter 2. The Locked Room Conundrum. A resounding gunshot shattered the evening's tranquility at Greystone Manor, the piercing crack echoing through the elegant drawing room adorned with crystal chandeliers and rich mahogany furniture. Gaslights flickered in protest, casting erratic shadows that danced across the ornate wallpaper, heightening the atmosphere of dread. Time halted as the guests collectively inhaled, their lavish gowns and smart suits momentarily forgotten, eyes wide with terror. Somewhere within those hallowed walls, the esteemed Mr. Reginald Ashton lay lifeless, a gentleman of impeccable reputation, whose life was snuffed out behind the locked door of his study. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold, his sharp features illuminated by the flickering flames of the fireplace. He took in the disarray, the plush carpet stained crimson beneath the heavy oak door, the muffled gasps of those who had gathered outside, and the palpable tension that thickened the air. "You will stand back," he commanded the crowd, his voice unwavering as he beckoned the constable, shielding the door with an urgent gesture. "Let me pass." As Poirot entered the room, he beheld the grim scene. Mr. Ashton sprawled on his Persian rug, a small revolver still clutched in his hand, an expression frozen in shock upon his face. The door, indeed locked from within, rendered impossible any earthly escape for the murderer. Yet Poirot's little grey cells hummed with the promise of revelation amidst the chaos. A tragedy this profound could not simply be accounted as self-inflicted. The intricacies of human nature would unveil a far darker tale. The gathering of anxious guests, comprised of friends, relatives, and acquaintances, felt like a gallery of potential culprits. Each person stood poised with an alibi, rehearsed yet flimsy, as lives hung upon their words. Miss Claudia Fairchild, a reputable socialite, scarcely concealed her tremors as she clutched her pearls. I'm sure it was an accident. He often practiced his shooting indoors." "That is no defense," Poirot stated, his voice steady and deliberate, turning to meet her gaze with unyielding scrutiny. "So you declare he was in the act of practicing? How fortunate for you, then, that you were not present at the very moment the fatal shot was fired." He noted the quicksilver flash of indignation that flickered across her face, masking a residual fear as if she were standing upon a precipice. "The door was bolted," barked Sir Jonathan Waverley, an old friend of the deceased, his voice quaking with frustration. "Reginald wouldn't have allowed anyone inside while he was handling firearms." He rubbed his temples, shadows gathering beneath his eyes like bruises. It must be a mistake. Believing it to be a mere oversight is certainly a luxury we cannot afford," Poirot replied coolly, sweeping his gaze across the room to scrutinize the expressions that flitted between disbelief and desperate concern. "I must ask, Sir Jonathan, are you aware of any particular animosities Mr. Ashton might have incurred?" "But of course," interjected Lady Vivian Montgomery, her voice like silk woven with tension. "You know what men like to say about each other behind closed doors. I would not be terribly surprised if some foul play were afoot." Although her lips curved into a delicate smile, her fingers twitched, revealing her unease. "They often spoke of certain dealings unseemly at best." Poirot approached the unyielding door, examining the pristine lock that offered no discernible entry to outside forces. "Indeed, Lady Montgomery, but while your description of men's behaviors may hold weight, we must not lose sight of the matter at hand," he noted, tapping the door handle lightly. "If we are to unlock this mystery, we must first understand the motivations of those who grieve." In the corner, Eleanor Hastings, a distant cousin of the late gentleman, wrung her hands. "Oh, what will be said of us now?" she fretted, eyes darting toward Poirot with a mix of panic and hope. "The scandal! You must uncover the truth, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald was a good man. He never harmed a soul." "Was he indeed?" Poirot posed, his brow arched sharply, yet he softened his tone, as if aware of the tremors veiling her cries. "You seem to harbor a great affection for Mr. Ashton, but allow me to ask, was he not embroiled in any financial misdealings? Perhaps, Miss Hastings, an indebtedness of sorts?" Eleanor faltered, her thoughts revealed in the flicker of her eyes. "He had loans, yes, but he was ever so meticulous. I was only concerned for his well-being and our family reputation." A quaver crept into her voice, betraying the depths of her hidden trepidation as she glanced nervously at the others. Poirot stepped away from them momentarily to peer out of the window where a storm loomed on the horizon, clouds twisting ominously in shades of grey. The winds of change swirled within, the room stirring the tensions among the assembled party, each increasingly aware of their fragility. But though suspicion blanketed them, he sensed an invisible thread weaving through their labyrinth of alibis, something forgotten by the others, lying in wait for his discovery. With the revolver still resting cold in Mr. Ashton's hand, Poirot turned back to the group. "A hint of something more dreadful is present," he declared, locking eyes with Lady Montgomery. "But it is not solely the locked door that limits us. There are misgivings hidden behind veils and barriers constructed of deceit. One of you, unwilling to reveal your truth, may hold the key to both this door and the wider secrets of Mr. Ashton's life." As the gathered guests collectively paled, the tension crackled like static in the air. Poirot leaned closer to the locked door, knuckles grazing its polished surface just as a muffled groan intruded from beyond. He pulled back, sweat coalescing on his brow, mind racing. The sound descended from the attic. Summoning constables from the other room, Poirot whispered, "There is a disturbance, and it carries trepidation. We are far from unknowing. Someone is hiding a truth within these walls." Just then, a figure fell into view through the crack of the door. A youth no older than 18, face pale and stricken, banged against the frame. "Help! You've got to help me! The master is in trouble!" The guests gasped collectively as Poirot's heart raced, realization dawning upon him. This night had only just begun, plunging deeper into a maze of horrors yet to be unveiled, eclipsing all notions of a harmless locked room. The mystery thickened like richly darkening clouds. Someone within that drawing room spun a tale of far more chilling consequences than even he could yet fathom. Chapter 3. The Letter That Arrived Too Late. A sudden burst of electricity crackled through the air as Hercule Poirot fumbled with the torn envelope, its contents tumbling out like whispers of secrets better left unspoken. The flickering gaslight danced across the room, casting long shadows that stretched like spectral fingers across the polished oak desk, a stark contrast to the violent storm raging outside. Heavy raindrops drummed against the window, punctuating the oppressive silence that had settled over Greystone Manor after the shocking spectacle of Mr. Ashton's death. The note, seemingly mundane at a glance, held a weight that thrust Poirot's heart into his throat, a dire warning from someone cloaked in anonymity, the ink still wet as if it had just surrendered its secrets to the night. "Mon Dieu," Poirot muttered, scanning the jagged sentences that spoke of betrayals and missing heirlooms, of a lineage tangled in webs of deceit and neglect. The urgency permeating the letter throbbed like the pulse of a warning bell. This is grave indeed. His mind raced, threading together the implications of the message with the chaotic aftermath of murder that surrounded him. The disarray in Mr. Ashton's study was not merely an act of violence, it was part of a larger tapestry woven from the threads of resentment, jealousy, and forgotten histories. The door creaked open behind him, interrupting his tumultuous thoughts. Lady Vivian Montgomery, her demeanor polished and composed, despite the recent horror, stepped into the room, seeking Poirot's calculations with an unsettling intensity. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice a melodious whisper, buoyed by feigned calm, "what is it that captures your attention so thoroughly? Surely it cannot be that haphazard note that drips with intrigue." Poirot turned slowly, the glint of suspicion in his eyes. "Ah, but madame, do not dismiss what lies upon this paper as mere frivolity. It speaks of shadows that linger, shadows that may well be responsible for the tragedy that has unfolded here. Do you not sense that all is not as it seems?" She stepped closer, her gaze flickering between defiance and fear. "You speak in riddles, Poirot. What shadows? What tragedy? Surely Reginald was simply a victim of unfortunate timing, a death at the hands of his own clumsiness, if I may say so." "It is your perception of unfortunate timing that troubles me," he countered, his voice sharpened to a point. "Words have weight, Lady Montgomery. The name Ashton is entwined with greed and desperation. I must ask, what do you know of the man's financial dealings?" At his probing, she paled slightly, the fluid grace in her posture faltering ever so slightly as she tilted her head, weighing her answer. "Reginald had his affairs, but what is that to me? I was only a friend, a lady among gentlemen. It is hardly my place to intrude upon their business." An astute thought, but Poirot leaned forward, narrowing his focus into the depths of her turquoise eyes. "Business affairs often carry their own poison, n'est-ce pas? A deal gone awry, a family heirloom perhaps, missing jewels, debts. Do you deny your acquaintanceship with his affairs could be linked to something darker?" The tension in the room coiled tighter as Lady Montgomery's expression shifted, revealing a truth masked by layers of delicate charm. I know nothing of jewels, only the consequences of too many secrets buried beneath polished surfaces." Her voice trembled, betraying the visceral fear lurking just beneath her delicate mask. Before Poirot could respond, a sudden clash resounded from the attic, a violent thud that knocked the air from his lungs, electrifying the atmosphere with fear. Lady Montgomery gasped, her facade cracking. "What was that? Is there someone else in the house?" "Indeed, it bears investigation." Poirot strode purposefully toward the door, the slip of the letter crumpling in his grasp, the urgency of the moment overtaking them. As he marched down the dark corridor, the shadows loomed larger, the walls seeming to close in with whispered secrets of their own. He reached the staircase, glancing back to find Lady Montgomery lingering behind, her face blanched, eyes wide with uncertainty. "You cannot go alone," she protested, her voice suddenly laden with an emotion that echoed deeper than mere concern. Poirot paused, considering her. "And yet, my dear lady, if there is a hidden truth to be found, it will not reveal itself through fear. You must decide whether to remain here in dread or join me in discovery. Though a warning comes before each choice, one must be ready to face the storm." With a reluctant huff, Lady Montgomery followed him, her footsteps trailing, just a heartbeat behind. They ascended through the creaking corridors, the dim glow of gas lanterns illuminating their path toward the attic, where the frantic knocking echoed like a heartbeat in the stillness. Arriving at the attic door, Poirot grasped the knob firmly, glancing back with a steadiness meant to offer her comfort. "Whatever waits beyond this door, we confront together. After all, courage can emerge even from the most delicate roses." He pushed the door open, a gust of cool air rushing past them as the attic's shadowy interior revealed itself. Dust motes, hanging like tiny stars against the muted backdrop of night. There, in the corner, hunched over an old trunk, was the pallid youth from earlier, his eyes, wild and haunted by raw fear, darted to them. "Please, you must listen," he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "The master, he's not dead. He's alive and—" Before he could finish, a piercing scream erupted from a darkened corner of the attic, slicing through the air like a shard of ice. Poirot spun around, heart racing, aware that the secrets of Greystone Manor, long buried and heavily guarded, were rising from their graves at an alarming rate. In this moment, the air crackled with the intensity of upheaval, every shadow shifting into a new potential, a truth waiting to plunge them all into darkness. The chilling implication of the youth's revelation echoed through Poirot's mind. Not a simple murder to be solved, but a web of tangled lives threatening to ensnare him at every turn. Chapter 4. The Will That Was Never Signed. A sharp crack echoed in the suffocating darkness, a sound that felt like the last breath of the world, snapping Hercule Poirot's attention like a taut wire ready to snap. He plunged deeper into the attic shadows, where hallowed gloom enveloped him, the scent of dust and aged timber rising like a thick fog. The youth, who had claimed Mr. Ashton was alive, recoiled, his eyes wide and shimmering in the dim gaslight like torches in the night. "You must believe me, he's trapped." His words slipped out, frantic and panicked, before another thud resonated from the far corner, grounding Poirot's resolve with a cold chill. He turned, pulse pounding in his ears. A heavy trunk lay open in the far corner, its lock splintered, the lid gaping like a mouth from which horrors could emerge. "What have you done?" Poirot implored, his keen eyes scanning the youth's ghostly face. "Tell me, where is Mr. Ashton? Speak the truth." The boy hesitated, fear etched into every line of his pale complexion. "The master. He told me to wait, but something isn't right. He never returned." The tremor in his voice mirrored the growing tempest outside, each raindrop a hammer against the windows. "Then he is not here. Where might he be?" Poirot pressed, stepping forward, the tension vibrating like a taut string ready to snap. The youth stammered, "In the cellar. I overheard two of them plotting, and I—" A bone-chilling scream erupted from below, puncturing the heavy air with deadly urgency. It belonged to none other than Lady Eleanor Hastings, and it resonated through the manor's core like an ominous bell tolling. Poirot wasted no time. The air cracked with his determination. "We must go. Lead the way." As they raced down the narrow staircase, shadows clung to the walls like grim spectators. The distant sound of Lady Hastings's cries ricocheted off the stone, a harbinger echoing the dire echoes of Reginald Ashton's own demise. Angie's fear morphed into tangible panic, and he grasped the boy's shoulder firmly. "You know how to find him. Speak, for time waits for no one." Not far. The cellar door." His voice cracked, but Poirot could feel unyielding resolve begin to seep through the fissures of the boy's dread. They descended another flight, the stone cool against Poirot's palm, and burst through the door to the cellar, where flickering shadows danced along the rough-hewn walls. The temperature dropped as they entered, bringing with it the scent of damp earth and something metallic that sent a jolt to Poirot's stomach. The cellar was vast, its corners cloaked in darkness. He could see storage barrels lined against one wall, each echoing secrets, while an ancient well loomed ominously in the far corner, its surface shrouded in deep shadows. The girl's screams rang with tragedy for a few heartbeats longer before falling silent. "Lady Hastings!" Poirot barked, his voice effectively mingling authority with urgency. The silence that followed seemed heavy, almost conspiratorial. A chilling breeze swept past, and Poirot's instincts urged him forward. The youth's fingers trembled against the wall, the reality of their shared urgency settling with a heavy hand. Suddenly, another scream fractured the silence, this one more like a warning, dragging through the air like a blade. Poirot turned sharply, eyes narrowing as indistinct shapes moved deeper within the shadows. "Who is there?" he demanded, projecting command into the darkness. A figure emerged, half illuminated by the lingering light from a gas lamp. The female silhouette, trapped between fear and defiance, stumbled forward, her hands trembling and stained with a dark liquid that gleamed ominously in the gaslight. "Blood?" Poirot's thoughts raced. "Lady Montgomery," he exclaimed, drawing closer. "What has happened? Where are the others?" There's been an accident," she gasped, a shiver racing through her body. "I found Eleanor. She was—" "Found her? Where?" Poirot interrupted, heart pounding, dread tightening his chest. "By the old well. She—" Lady Montgomery's breath hitched, her eyes darting toward the lightless corners, pain shadowing her expression like a traitor within her countenance. "I was too late. A sudden burst of light flooded the cellar, illuminating the dreadful scene. A dim lantern crude by the trembling hands of a constable, flanked by two others in uniform. In the center of the room, an overturned chair lay alongside a darkened figure sprawled upon the stone floor, the faint outline of a woman. Eleanor Hastings, lifeless, her once delicate features now twisted in terror. Dark hair splayed around her like a raven's nest. Poirot felt the world shift beneath him, the ground swirling with disbelief. Lady Montgomery honed in on him, her eyes burning with desperation and accusation. What if this was not an accident, Poirot? What if Eleanor came too close to uncovering secrets better left hidden? He stepped back, mind spinning with the implications. A tangled web of inheritance, whispered resentments, and buried grudges beneath the guise of affection. Secrets? Are you suggesting that the motive to kill may lie intertwined with fate and legacy, or perhaps a will that should never see the light of day? Yet before she could respond, a crashing sound from the far side stole their attention as the cellar door swung wide, flinging itself against the wall with a violence that echoed throughout the darkness of Greystone Manor. And through that doorway, a somber figure emerged, soaked to the skin, eyes filled with a tempest of fury and regret. "I came as soon as I could," shouted Reginald Ashton, drenched and disheveled. A spectre returned from the dead. Except this time, he was no longer alone in his guilt. Poirot's heart raced, threads of suspicion intertwining with revelation. As the air thickened with tension and the shadows edged closer to swallow them all whole, he knew he was standing on a precipice. This sinister puzzle was collapsing, and with it, souls begging for a reckoning. Then, from the depths of the darkness, an ominous echo rang. A letter, flapping madly within the ascendant storm, slipped from the folds of Reginald's coat. It fluttered towards Poirot, its intent vile and clear. Another secret waiting to be unveiled, or perhaps a warning from the abyss. Reginald stepped forward, eyes locking onto Poirot's, desperation sparking within. "You must help me. I fear for my life." But before he could utter another word, the lantern flickered once more, casting ghostly shadows as yet another shadowy figure lingered at the threshold behind him. A figure that Poirot knew well, yet who had returned with a much darker intention than any other in the room. And in that moment, suspended between life and death, truth and deception, Poirot realized that the very fate of Greystone Manor was teetering on the edge of revelation. threatening to plunge them all into chaos as the storm raged on. Chapter 5. A Disappearance Among Friends. A chilling scream pierced the oppressive silence of Greystone Manor, reverberating through the dimly lit corridors like a bell tolling an ominous warning. Hercule Poirot, ensconced in the parlour beside Lady Montgomery, and the others gathered, leapt to his feet, his heart racing as the shriek echoed. "It is Eleanor!" Lady Montgomery gasped, clutching her chest as if the very sound had torn at her inside. "What's happened?" Poirot demanded, his voice steady, though his mind raced to piece the puzzle together. He glanced toward the cabin's heavy oak door, expecting a sudden rush of air and someone tumbling in with an explanation, or worse, bad news. But instead, the door remained stubbornly closed, shrouded in shadows that seemed to thicken and swirl around it. "We must investigate," Poirot said firmly, his gaze lingering critically on the others in the room. Lady Montgomery's face was pale, her lips pressed tightly together, while the pallid youth lingered behind her, his eyes darting with a wild blend of hope and fear. I will come with you," the boy stuttered, but Poirot waved him aside. "Stay here. We cannot have all of you roaming the halls like spectres." As Poirot and Lady Montgomery approached the door, its gnarled surface felt alive with tension. "Eleanor could be in grave danger," Lady Montgomery whispered. Poirot opened the door, revealing a hallway, bathed in the flickering glow of gaslight that cast long, dancing shadows over the ornate wallpaper, stretching toward them like clawed hands. The echoes of their footsteps propelled them onward, guided by the lingering echo of Eleanor's cry that had faded into a heavy, suffocating silence. As they reached the staircase, a sudden rush of wind swept through, extinguishing one of the gas lamps. The darkness cascaded around them, leaving only the faint light from the upper hall. Poirot halted. "Stay close," he murmured, the uneasy sense of surveillance crawling along his skin. Shadows loomed and distorted, making every creak of the mansion's bones a reminder of the peril simmering just below the threshold of reason. "A note," Lady Montgomery exclaimed suddenly, pointing toward the ornate side table nearby, cluttered with fragile china and decanters. It fluttered mockingly, as if trying to escape. Poirot approached cautiously. Placed upon the cultured surface was a crumpled sheet of paper, hastily scrawled with an elegant but trembling script. "Handwriting, fear is evident within every stroke," he observed quietly. "What does it say?" Lady Montgomery strained to read it aloud. "Dearest friends, I am sorry for the pain my departure will cause, but the truths I have discovered are too dangerous to remain. Reginald, please forgive me. I could not bear to stay and watch. The storm is coming." Her voice fell to silence, brimming with confusion and dread. "What does it mean?" Poirot's eyes narrowed, contemplating the message as an intricate tapestry of relationships swirled in his mind. "It implies intent, a choice made under duress. Yet, it does not clarify her whereabouts, nor the exact precipice she stood upon. We must find her." The chamber door behind them swung ajar, and the boys they left behind came bustling through, disrupted by commotion. "What's happening? Where is Lady Eleanor?" one of them demanded, his youthful face stark against the lantern light. "We heard a noise," the other interjected, stepping closer in a mixture of curiosity and concern. Suddenly the wind howled again, forcing the door behind them to slam shut with a resounding boom, then shifting the air within the room. Poirot turned, assessing every face around him. "None of you are to leave this room," he instructed firmly. "You all remain here until I have solved this conundrum." Their faces fell, betraying an undeniable fear that they could be implicated. Silently, Poirot noted the break of sweat, trying to break through Lady Montgomery's calm facade, and the boy's sudden stillness betrayed his inner turmoil. "Perhaps it's all part of it, the need for a distraction," the boy murmured, fidgeting with his shirt cuff nervously. Poirot's sharp gaze locked onto the youth. "What do you mean? Speak clearly." "I can't." Eleanor was cleaning something from the drawer. It was there one moment before she... He faltered, twisting his hands as if they were indeed squeezing answers from air. Before he could continue, the floor beneath them quaked, ominously with thunder, a rumbling sound echoing that felt like the sky itself was confirming the horror unfolded in this realm. Lady Montgomery, visibly distressed, stepped back a pace, her eyes darting toward the door as if anticipating something dreadful to emerge, the candlelight in the sconces flickering wildly. "Do you think she's gone?" Poirot's expression hardened, meticulously piecing together this unsolvable riddle. "There is something more to this," he declared, raising a finger toward the trembling group. "Why did she leave in such a manner? What did she uncover that inspired her flight?" Suddenly, a sharp cry shattered the silence, resonating through the manor. "Eleanor!" A voice called desperately from the depths of the shadows, echoing like a siren, summoning lost souls. Poirot knew that voice and felt the icy grip of realization quickening his pulse. That scream, it came from the cellar. He turned sharply, gesturing for them to follow, but as they scurried toward the door, another sound, a horrible crash from the adjoining hallway, sent a jolt through them, freezing their progress. A figure stumbled into their line of vision, a man, drenched and wild-eyed, his clothes clinging damply to his form, fear radiating like heat from his skin. "It's Reginald! What have you done?" Poirot shouted, confusion mingling with disbelief. Reginald's lips moved, but the words were swallowed by the din of thunder. Before Poirot could decipher his expression or warning, a dark shadow loomed behind him. A second figure emerging from the darkness, a woman, cloaked and moving with an eerie, deliberate grace. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the walls of Greystone Manor, thick with dread and secrecy, seemed to bend inward, spiraling into chaos. Poirot's world narrowed into the singular heartbeat of the house as it whispered all its dark truths. The air charged with implications. Eleanor was more than just missing. Her fate was intertwined with the darkness that loomed before them, and they would have to unravel it before the threads closed around them all. Chapter 6. Shadows of the Past. The attic door burst open with a thunderous bang, a gust of stale air rushing out like the breath of a long-buried secret. A figure spiraled through the shadows. Poirot, heart pounding, eyes wide as he stumbled back, paralyzed by what lay before him. At his feet lay the crumpled body of a man, clad in ratty garments, a cruel gash slicing through his temple, blood pooling on the dusty floorboards like a red ink blot on a forgotten parchment. The dim light from a flickering lantern barely illuminated the ominous visages of the old trunks and shelves, the musty smell seeping deep into his senses, bearing witness to decades of hidden history. The scene reeked of unspeakable calamity. This was no accidental tumble from the rickety stairs. "Mais non!" exclaimed Poirot, softly, kneeling beside the stranger, whose face was faintly familiar, yet entirely obscure. Whispers of memories pulsed through his mind, hinting at the village gossip of years past. Lady Montgomery had spoken about a family member lost to time, someone whose fate had become a hushed scandal. "Who is this man, Poirot?" Lady Montgomery's voice cut through the dimness, trembling and strained as she hesitated at the threshold, silhouetted against the flickering candlelight. She seemed to shrink from the morbid sight, her hands clenching at her sides. "Perhaps he is a messenger from the past," Poirot replied, scrutinizing the lifeless form and searching for signs, clues hidden among the specifics. "Or merely a victim of our own insufficient defenses. Reputation can kill as surely as the blade." He pinched the edge of the collar, his fingers brushing the stained fabric. A scrap of paper, frayed and folded, dislodged itself and tumbled to the floor. Lady Montgomery stepped closer, her initial horror shifting toward curiosity mingled with dread. "What is it?" She dared to lean forward, eyes searching Poirot's face for answers, while he peered intently at the note now caught between the floorboards. "Ah," he unfolded the delicate paper, the familiar slant of handwriting emerging. A woman's hand, elegant yet shaky. "It is from Eleanor Hastings," he murmured as he carefully read, voice rising with urgency. "Do not let the past dictate our future. I unearth truths long buried, but I must tread lightly, for shadows stir when secrets emerge." "Eleanor, she was here in the attic," Lady Montgomery whispered, her voice barely breaking through the storm that thundered outside. "She must have known—" "Indeed," interrupted Poirot, feeling the adrenaline spike, realization pulsing through his veins like the lightning illuminating the darkened attic. "A connection to this poor man. A family connection, prone to altering the very fabric of this tragedy." He rose to his feet, shoving the paper into his pocket, as every instinct urged him onward, dissecting the emotional layers carefully woven around Eleanor and the villagers' whispered histories. "Poirot," Lady Montgomery's voice trembled. "The storm has stirred upheaval within us, but what act of fate has brought us here? Is it truly Eleanor we seek? Each question leads us closer, yet the answer hisses like a snake in the grass, keeping its head concealed." Poirot's gaze darted towards the door, aware of the shifting shadows lengthening along the walls. "Let us examine the confines of this room further. There may be more than just a journal left sealed in time." As he started to inspect the musty shelves, he caught sight of an old wooden chest, half hidden by a tattered curtain of cobwebs that danced like phantom fingers in the dim light. With determination, he pulled it into the lantern's glow, the creaking sound echoing in the quiet of disuse. "What do you fear of your past, my dear Lady Montgomery?" he asked, casting a sidelong glance at her apprehensive posture. Her expression twisted, a myriad of emotions cascading across her face. "It is not the past that threatens, Poirot, but the burden of reputations stained and tangled. The histories we weave dictate our lives." Before she could elucidate further, a loud crash resonated from below, shaking the very beams of the attic. Poirot's heart raced, the air thickening with deeper unease, as Lady Montgomery stumbled backward, her eyes wide with palpable terror. "Mon Dieu, what was that?" she gasped, her hand clutched at her throat, fingers trembling precariously. "Something or someone has come above," Poirot asserted, his mind working swiftly. "You stay here. I shall investigate." As he turned, instinct told him to grab the crumpled note, holding it tightly in his grasp. They would need any clues this chaos might yield. But as he reached the attic door, It swung open unexpectedly, and a figure loomed in the frame. A woman cloaked in shadows, her face obscured by a black veil, an aura of foreboding surrounding her like a dark cloud. Lady Montgomery gasped, caught between fear and recognition, the grip of reality tightening with every heartbeat. "Who are you?" Poirot's voice cut through the air, commanding yet wary as he searched her hidden expression, gazing for truth behind her obscure guise. "Your pursuit leads to unforeseen ends, Hercule Poirot," she whispered, venom lacing her tone. "The shadows of the past have reportedly whispered your name." With a rush of anger, Poirot took a step forward, fleeting glimmers of the past unraveling like a thread he could urgently grip. But the woman lifted a hand, raising a gun slightly, a flash of metal in the wavering lantern light, capturing the atmosphere of dread now woven tightly around them like a vice. "If you wish to dodge uncivil wounds that are time-sensitive, I suggest you 8 parts your company here and flee," she intoned, an abrupt threat that dropped like a stone into the maelstrom of their fears as thunder rumbled through the manor in sinister agreement. In that moment, as she stood there tense between them, the tremors of the past echoed hauntingly in the present. Poirot's mind raced as the ultimate confrontation loomed, sensing that unveiling the truth would come at a dreadfully steep price. Behind him, the corpse lay motionless, and a single breath away from them, the threshold to the unknown, a destiny disrupted, pushed against time's very fabric. The stakes had elevated, and Poirot knew they had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Chapter 7. A Whisper from the Dead. The sudden crack of thunder sent vibrations through the walls that echoed in Poirot's bones, and as he spun around, the figure in the doorway gestured menacingly with the gun, a silent threat that thundered louder than the storm outside. Heart racing, he felt the electric tension prickling the air, a promise of violence that threatened to engulf them all. Before he could think of an escape or an adequate reply, a piercing cry erupted from the shadows behind the cloaked woman. "Eleanor!" It was Reginald's voice, filled with a desperate urgency that sliced through the chaos, rendering the atmosphere heavy with dread. Poirot's mind reeled, a name uttered at the brink of calamity, and like a taut bowstring aimed at his heart, the reality of Eleanor's plight cut through him. In that frenzied moment, the mysterious interloper stepped forward, shadows blending with the darkness trailing her form, a ghostly figure bearing the weight of unspoken truths. "Do not seek what is buried deeper than flesh and bone," she warned, her voice a low rasp that echoed ominously in the confined space. "The whispers of the dead connect to the living in ways you cannot fathom." "Enough of this charade," Poirot commanded, his voice rising above the tempest howling outside as he fought to maintain control. The gun lowered slightly, but not enough to ease his apprehension. "You speak in riddles, but I seek only answers. Who are you?" The woman inhaled sharply, her eyes glinting with a feverish intensity. "You ask for answers, yet you do not comprehend the danger of such knowledge." With a sudden, calculated movements, she turned to lead them deeper into the recesses of the attic, and in that instant, the flickering lantern light revealed the dusty protrusions of irregularity, a collection of forgotten artifacts strewn across the floor, a scattered testament to lives entwined with secrets long held. Poirot felt the spidery grip of suspense coiling tighter. "What is it you wish to show me?" he probed, a dangerous calm enveloping his skin. With a subtle nod, the woman backed away from the open door, and the darkness beyond seemed to consume her, drawing him in with an irrefutable force. The past hides treasures and curses alike, Monsieur Poirot. Come, explore what you seek. It lies before you. A tremor of fear coursed through Lady Montgomery. "Do not go, Poirot," she whispered, clutching his arm. "The shadows are alive here." Ignoring the plea, Poirot stepped into the murk, propelled by his relentless need for understanding, but beneath the surface of his confidence, uncertainty festered. It was a labyrinth of echoes, a cacophony of half-remembered conversations and long silent screams as he scanned the cluttered space. Tucked behind an old beam, precariously covered in cobwebs, he noticed something glimmering, a single item among the detritus that sparked a flicker of recognition in his mind. Something warm clutched darkly in his palm as he reached for it, an envelope addressed with elegant precision, the ink fresh yet fraying, like a skeleton emerging from the soil of a disinterred grave. The return address sent a bolt through him, a place intertwined with whispers in the village, the Hastings family estate. "What do we have here?" Poirot murmured, feeling the weight of the discovery flood his senses. "Careful!" gasped Lady Montgomery, now desperately leaning against the attic door frame, the storm outside amplifying in intensity. "The past is not merely a shadow, it can reach out and grab you." "Indeed. But this is a key, my dear lady," he countered, fingers trembling as he carefully pried the letter from its seal and unfolded it, the dim light revealing a message laden with concealed threats and hints of undisclosed connections. The neat handwriting of Eleanor seemed to promise clarity, yet posed danger. It began, "To whoever finds this, my existence is a precarious vessel tethered to the darkness of our families. History secrets lie beneath each family tree, and I have unearthed truths about the Hastings that could sever bonds and bring calamity." As he read on, the contents unraveled connections between Eleanor and the dead man sprawled upon the attic floor. Gilbert Hastings, a name that pierced his thoughts like an arrow, a scandal that linked their lineage, each word encapsulating layers of emotional turmoil and the tantalizing shadow of a family's buried guilt. She discovered something perilous that tied them, a secret that may have driven her away, or towards something more sinister. Suddenly, the crack of thunder intensified, and the lights flickered violently before plunging them into darkness. An unnerving silence fell, leaving only the pounding of Poirot's heart echoing in his ears like a relentless warning. In that moment of vulnerability, the cloaked woman stepped closer to him, her hand outstretched. He felt the presence of her intentional threat. "You will not escape the fates of the past, Poirot. Some truths are meant to remain buried." Before he could retort, the sound of breaking glass shattered the silence, accompanied by a faint scream that echoed from below, resonating with terror. The walls vibrated with it, a reverberation of past pain merging with present dread. "Eleanor," Reginald's voice rang out anew from the hallway, frantic and alarmed, just moments before the attic door swung open with a violent force, slamming against the wall and sending dust swirling into the air like remnants of lost hope. Adrenaline coursed through Poirot's veins as he felt an unexpected pull towards the door, urgency clawing at him. With one last glance at the lurking figure, he dashed towards the opening, compelled by the promise of more revelations, more riddles, and more danger. "I must know what happened," he declared, but no sooner had he taken a step than the cloaked woman raised the gun once more, her voice cold as steel. "Then prepare for the consequences of your curiosity, It echoed, a threat laced with the potency of foreboding that hung palpably in the air, a harbinger of untold dangers lying in wait. And as Poirot stood there, heart pounding with undeniable trepidation, he realized this dance with secrets had turned deadly, and the line between the living and the dead blurred dangerously close as the truth soared dangerously beyond his grasp. Chapter 8. Unmasking Deceit. A deafening scream erupted from the shadows, piercing the oppressive silence of the manor, like glass shattering in the stillness of the night. Poirot's heart raced as he turned to see Lady Montgomery collapse against the wall, her porcelain face drained of color, eyes wide with horror. "Reginald!" she wailed, panic constricting her voice as the pronounced echo of another scream filled the air, seemingly reverberating from the floor below. In that moment, every ounce of calm Poirot had cultivated slipped away, replaced by a primal instinct to confront the chaos that loomed beyond the flickering candlelight of the attic. "Stay here," he commanded, though he knew such admonitions fell on deaf ears in the face of panic. With one fluid motion, Poirot grasped the woman's arm, the cloaked figure who had threatened him only moments ago, and threw her back into the recesses of the attic, utilizing the element of surprise to push her out of his way. The smell of dust and disuse filled his nostrils as he bolted down the rickety stairs, propelled by urgency and dread. He emerged onto the landing, heart hammering against his chest, only to find the atmosphere thickening with confusion and chaos. The remnants of the party, a ragtag assembly of distressed guests, were gathering in the foyer, their faces marred by shock and uncertainty. They recoiled at the sight of their determined investigator, the candles in the chandelier casting wavering shadows on their anxious faces as they whispered amongst themselves, barely concealing their rising tension. "Reginald!" Poirot called out, scanning the room, eyes sharp for the man's distinctive frame. "What has happened?" But it was Lady Montgomery's voice that shattered the cacophony, her features contorted not only by shock, but by something deeper, a brewing storm of guilt and indignation. He vanished," she stammered, twisting a handkerchief in her hands, anxiety spilling over into despair. "One moment he was there, and then I heard a crash. I've looked, but he's—" The front door swung open, splintering the air around them and causing everyone to jump. Reginald stood framed in the doorway, pale and shaken, but alive, and with him a sense of breathless tension, like the stretched wire of a taut bow ready to snap. "Eleanor, she is here!" His voice rang out, trembling and desperate. "We must find her." Poirot's thoughts raced back to the letter, echoing warnings of buried family secrets that could shatter reputations. "You saw her, Reginald?" he probed, stepping forward, his eyes narrowing as he carefully weighed the gravity of Reginald's revelation against the chaotic undercurrents swirling around them. "I didn't see her. I heard her." Reginald's voice trembled under the strain of pressed urgency. "She called my name from the cellar, the old storage room. I swear it." As he spoke, the group, once huddled in fear, began to murmur, casting furtive glances, each hiding their own unease behind a facade of solidarity. "Gather round, all of you," Poirot declared, his voice cutting through the growing din. "We will not make a further move until all have shared their accounts. The intertwined fates of our lives cannot be fractured further by misinformation. Trust, mes amis, is pivotal now." He glanced around, noting the shifting expressions of concern, mingled with suspicion. This was a breeding ground for hidden truths. "Where is Lady Isabel?" interjected a nervous voice from the crowd. It was Martin, the aloof friend, whose pallor had grown more pronounced. "If this is about Eleanor, then surely she is where she should be," Poirot interrupted with a sharp glance, in the knowledge of her past. "Yet, hear this. Fear has a way of dragging one to the depths of desperation." He observed as Martin's gaze flickered among the group, a telltale sign of a man guarding his own secrets. They gathered in the dining room, the table still set for dinner, silverware gleaming menacingly under flickering candlelight and heavy with the stale odor of premonition. Poirot took his seat, eyes piercing, dissecting the group while maintaining an air of calm. "We will begin with each of you recounting your evening and what led us to this crescendo," he urged, his tone inviting but firm. After several uneasy glances, it was Lady Montgomery who spoke first, her voice quivering yet growing steadily stronger. "We were discussing family legacies. What lies between the Hastings and our family? I feared the ghosts of the past would reach out, and," she paused, measuring the weight of her next words, "I felt unease in the air. It was almost as if someone wished to disrupt the dining room's tranquility." "Strikingly accurate, wouldn't you say?" Poirot probed, noting the subtle shift in Reginald's posture as if he bore the burden of truth coiling tightly around his heart. "Reginald, how confidently do you claim to have heard Eleanor?" "A voice like hers, unmistakable," Reginald asserted, emotion crashing over him like waves upon the shore. "She often spoke about the hidden corners of the estate. She even alluded to things she had found in the cellar. Things that could—" His voice faltered, choking on implications, and the room became gripped by silence, fear tangling in the air like a web. Poirot's eyes sharpened, honing in on the telltale twitch of Martin's lip as he glanced toward the frame of the door, his expression betraying both anger and something darker. "Surely you would consider that quite familiar, n'est-ce pas?" Poirot mused, leaning forward, scrutinizing the collection of faces. "Perhaps you too have discovered a particular interest in the depths of our host's estate. Hiding amongst shadows, perhaps, hiding something even darker." Martin bristled, his defensiveness transparent, as tensions mounted. "I have nothing to hide," he retorted. Yet Poirot sensed the air crackling with unresolved blame. Each of them a puppet in a twisted play, strings taut and ready to snap. At that very moment, a sharp knock echoed from the cellar door, palpable and foreboding, silencing the room. Reginald's face blanched, the hope of egress narrowing in an instant. "Eleanor!" he shouted, urgency tinged with desperation. As everyone's eyes turned toward the door, another sound followed, a low, shuddering moan that slithered through the cracks as though invoked by the very nature of terror itself. "Stay here," Poirot ordered, suppressing the urge to leap from his chair, yet as the breath of anticipation swept through the room, he knew. The answer lay just beyond that threshold, wrapped in shadows, threatening to swallow truth whole. The atmosphere brimmed with unspeakable dread as he rose slowly and reached for the handle, poised on the precipice of revelation and terror. And then a voice, low and chilling, drifted from the other side, cutting through the stillness, familiar yet insidiously transformed. "Let me in, Reginald. It is time for our family secrets to be revealed." Poirot felt ice coil in his veins as realization struck. This was no ordinary moment. In that heartbeat, the specters of the past were no longer whispers. They surged to the forefront, and with it came a truth that could fissure their very souls. Every eye was on him as he turned the handle, locked in the clutch of dread. A single wrong decision could plunge them all into darkness unending. Chapter 9. The Trap of Truth. A sudden scream tore through the air, shattering the tension that had enveloped the group, and sending a jolt of icy fear coursing through Poirot as he grasped the doorknob, poised to reveal the secrets lurking behind the cellar door. In that instant, a cacophony erupted, a bang, followed by terrified shouts and the shuffling of feet, scurrying away from the foreboding threshold as Reginald stumbled back, eyes wide and pleading. "Stay back," his voice quaked. "You don't know what's in there." Poirot's heart raced. "What do you mean, Reginald? What have you seen?" The gathering storm of chaos consumed the room, every flicker of candlelight casting wavering shadows that crept along the walls, finding refuge in darkened corners where the truth had long been buried. Lady Montgomery gasped, her earlier resolve crumbling, as she pressed a trembling hand against her mouth. It can't be her, not Eleanor. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her deepest fears. "Let me in," the voice from the other side of the door crooned, sweet and deceptive, yet crackling with a bitter edge, echoing the haunting familiarity that sent shivers along Poirot's spine. Eleanor's very essence had taken on a sinister weight, and yet there she was, attempting to breach the living world once more. "What does she want?" snapped Martin, his pallor deepening as he pushed forward, a mixture of curiosity and dread etched on his features. "We shouldn't entertain this madness. She's dead. No spirit can walk among the living." Poirot observed Martin closely, noting the rapid blink of his eyes, the tight clenching of his fists. He was hiding something. The tension crackled like the air before a storm, thick with secrets threatening to spill forth. "Ah, Martin, but how easily you dismiss the fears of those who've witnessed the inexplicable. Perhaps you ought to reconsider the nature of what we face." Poirot's words dripped with both warning and intrigue, coaxing the tides of guilt that washed over his onlookers. "Enough of this idle talk, Poirot." Reginald thrust himself forward, urgency lacing his every word. "Eleanor is in danger. We can't let her remain in the dark. She needs our help." "Or perhaps," Poirot countered, raising an eyebrow, "she wishes to ensnare us in her web of deception, to draw us into the very chaos we seek to escape." Just then, a violent shudder rocked the house, an ominous reminder that forces beyond their control were at play. The lights dimmed momentarily, flickering like the flickering of emotions within the room, flashes of paranoia roller-coastering through each witness. Poirot turned to Lady Montgomery, her breathing rapid, her hands trembling as she clutched the edge of the table. "What is it you know, my dear?" he pressed gently, observing the reveal of another layer of the unfolding tragedy. She hesitated. Then, catching sight of Martin's furious glare, she lowered her voice to a whisper. "I was aware of Eleanor's discoveries in the cellar. She found something she believed could answer our questions, but never shared it with anyone. She warned me against digging into the past. And yet, here we stand," Poirot said, his mind whirling. The threads of the evening wound tighter, each revelation a step deeper into a labyrinth of shared horrors. "Tell me then, did you have an inkling of what lay below?" "No," she insisted immediately, her voice shaking. "But I felt it, an urgency, a dread. It drew her closer, as if the very shadows of our family wished her to pay them a visit." Her eyes shifted, landing on Martin, puzzlement merging with fear. "I cannot be responsible for what happened. Not here. Not in this place." Poirot sensed the tightening knot of blame beginning to form in the small company. He captured their emotions, swirling around him like a storm, each pulse dictating the actions about to unfold. Then let us draw ourselves together. It is time to corner the spectre. We shall confront the truth. The lies shall not fester longer in this manner. With that, he turned decisively toward the cellar door, summoning his courage as he grasped the handle. Sensing the weight of their collective gazes upon him, a rush of adrenaline surging through his veins, he turned the knob. The door creaked open slowly, revealing shadows darker than night. It beckoned them like a siren's call, promising knowledge but lurking with hostility. "Eleanor!" Reginald shouted desperately, stepping into the darkness. Yet Poirot pulled him back with a firm hand. "A moment, mon ami." He pressed forward, realizing that the time for calculated steps had passed. "Whatever we find must be approached with caution. The history of this family holds the power to ensnare us." Before he could articulate further, a figure surged from the abyss of shadows, lunging with purpose. Poirot barely caught the form of Eleanor, or what appeared to be her, wreathed in an ethereal glow as they collided. With him, a torrent of movement echoing throughout the manor, gasping breaths mingled with frantic shouts as the chilling air thickened with confusion and fear. "Help me!" she cried, face obscured by wild tendrils of hair, her voice strained as if the walls themselves conspired to hold her back. Panic erupted as the guests pressed together, instinctively drawn toward the protection of their collective fear. "Get away!" Martin's voice rang out as he threw open the door and began stepping back, overwhelmed by the unexpected realization. "This is madness! Someone is playing a game with us!" Poirot turned, freezing mid-action as a piercing shriek punctuated the air, resonating from the depths of the cellar. It was a sound meant to unravel sanity, a curse embedded in desperation and anguish. Racing heartbeat thudding in his ears, Poirot stepped into the fray, intent on bridging the divide that threatened to engulf them all. But there, standing among them, towering against the candlelight, was a figure in black, a flash of the cloaked woman, her gun glinting ominously as her laughter rippled through the dimly lit room. "Ah, mes amis," she sneered, "the truth awaits, but be careful what you wish for. In the pursuit of revelations, one must always be prepared for the return of the buried beyond the grave." And with a sound akin to a snapped thread, she raised the weapon, aiming it at the heart of their gathering, the very knife of fate poised to plunge deep into the suffocating tension. Caught between courage and fear, conviction and betrayal, just on the cusp of revelation that could shake the manor to its very foundations. The trap was set, and soaring echoes danced in the dark, the greatest mystery yet to unfold before their very eyes. Chapter 10. The Clue Beneath the Carpet. A sharp, gut-wrenching scream pierced through the room, its echoing cry sending icy fingers of terror snaking down Poirot's spine as he stood before the open cellar door. The shadow looming beyond the threshold was not Eleanor, but a frantic spectre of flesh and blood. Lady Montgomery, stumbling back as a crimson stain blossomed across her crisp white blouse, her hands trembling in horror. "It cannot be true," she gasped, retreating almost blindly against the flickering light of the candles that surrounded them, as if expecting the very walls to offer protection from the chaos unraveling before her. "What happened?" Poirot's voice cut through the din, firm but tinged with urgency, as he stepped closer to the beleaguered woman. The others fell silent, their gasps and murmurs swallowed by the tension hanging thick in the air like a suffocating pall. Reginald's eyes were wide, reflecting a blend of disbelief and incipient panic, while Martin stood frozen, his expression a tumultuous blend of denial and raw fear, betraying hidden truths in the clenching of his jaw. It was under the carpet, Lady Montgomery managed, each breath a struggle, as she pointed towards the ornate rug that lay in the center of the room, its intricate patterns now a mockery of the calamity it concealed. I saw a glint, a flash of metal. I thought it was just a trinket, but her words liquefied with hysteria as she pressed trembling fingers to her mouth, eyes darting wildly to the doorway as if the shadows might summon forth horrors from their depths. Poirot's brow furrowed, his little grey cells cogitating on the implications of her revelations. "We must see," he declared, motioning for Reginald and Martin to assist as he approached the ornate carpet, an island of opulence amidst the unraveling chaos. The yarns of its pattern seemed to pulse under the weight of secrets, and Poirot could feel an electric charge thrumming in the air, an impending confrontation with the past. As the three men knelt to lift the corners of the heavy rug, a low murmur of anticipation swept through the group. They peeled back the fabric to reveal the polished wooden floor beneath, startlingly bare against the backdrop of the dimly lit room. Poirot grasped the edge of the carpet, carefully pulling it back, revealing something that gleamed perilously. A silver locket, intricately designed, but stained with hints of rust and time. "Ah," Poirot mused softly, his fingers brushing against the locket's surface. "What secrets do you hold?" He flipped the tiny clasp, and it sprang open, revealing not a picture, but a folded note, its edges yellowed and frayed. Around him, the tension grew palpable, eyes wide and eager. The previous chaos momentarily dampened as curiosity took hold, like moths drawn to the flicker of a candle. "Read it," Martin urged, his voice edged with desperation as paranoia clawed at the already frayed edges of their composure. Poirot studied the note, his mind weaving through the implications. "Caution, my friends. Let us not leap to conclusions, for the words may be as twisted as the hearts that penned them." He read aloud, his voice steady but low, each word a stark reminder of the weight they carried. "To my dearest Eleanor, the truth of our family will rise, dragged unwillingly from the depths of despair. We shall meet again in the shadows, and when we do, I will extract the retribution I so dearly seek." Gasps erupted around him, but Martin's reaction was far more telling. His pallor returned, a sheen of sweat dotting his brow. "It's nonsense, a mere trifle. What do letters matter? It does not bring her back." His voice trembled with frustration, hands balling into fists at his sides as he clenched his teeth. "Ah, but monsieur," Poirot replied, his voice unfazed, "this little note, it paints a picture of darker things, jealousies, resentments, and perhaps a motive that has lingered, more fiercely than any ghost." He glanced up sharply at Martin, who shifted uncomfortably under the weight of Poirot's suspicion. "You must understand, the past is as relentless as the tides. Did you not entertain the notion that Eleanor's discoveries were worth more than any careless trinket?" Reginald stepped closer to Martin, a flicker of accusation igniting in his eyes. "Is there something you're not telling us? Did you threaten Eleanor?" "Do not be absurd," Martin barked back, emotion spilling into rage, but the fissure was already visible, the deep vein of hidden fear and guilt running beneath his frayed defenses. Poirot's gaze flickered between them, considering. "Let us not devolve into accusations. Such methods do well in passing times, but at this juncture, They shall serve to cloud our vision. We must uncover the purpose of this locket and the person who intended for it to remain hidden. And then it struck him, the shift in atmosphere like a cold slip of air heralding an unsuspected storm. He turned once more towards Lady Montgomery, her shaky breathing now tense, eyes darting between Martin and Reginald. You spoke of Eleanor's explorations beneath the manor. You warned her, yet stood by as she delved deep into shadows. Clearly, something was buried beneath more than just the cellar floor. Were there not even whispers concerning the past? Whispers, Lady Montgomery echoed, confusion wrinkling her brow. I only wished to protect her, to warn her of the spectre she ought not to awaken. Yet it seems, Poirot interjected, that those ghosts were not meant to remain silent for long. The secrets of this family seep into the present, inviting their unnerving designs into the light of day. Suddenly the ground vibrated underfoot, a deep rumble that shattered the fragile calm, sending apparent fear cascading across their faces. Poirot felt it, a tremor of energy, desperation rippling through the manor's very structure. Get back, Reginald warned, eyes widening as the lights flickered violently and the very walls shuddered. The escaping air was filled with the sound of shuffling, of something awakening from slumber. Just then, the carpet shifted further. A heavy object was pushed upward from below, and before Poirot could react, the floor burst open, revealing a hand, clothed in a sleeve of fraying black fabric, grasping at the light, its skeletal fingers extending in a desperate plea for freedom. The cacophony rolled forth, reverberating through the room as the action contracted into a singular moment of horror, each heart thudding, each breath pausing in disbelief, sweeping the room into a shadow of madness. "Eleanor!" Reginald screamed, his voice chaotic, yet laced with a desperate yearning, lost in the swell of the storm their lives had become. But as Poirot stood frozen, grappling with the horrifying truth spiraling out of control, he understood. They were perhaps no longer only facing the ghosts of the past, but rather incurring the wrath of an inescapable fate, propelling them deeper into the unknown. Their world teetered on the edge. The veil of reality was about to lift. The question now was, who amongst them would survive to confront what lay beyond? Chapter 11. The Unexpected Confession. An anguished cry shattered the dim light, a voice dripping with torment that reverberated throughout the manor, drawing the attention of every trembling soul within. Poirot glanced towards the cellar's gaping maw, where the apparition of Eleanor's hand had just vanished, like a wisp of smoke, lost within the swirling chaos. "What have you done?" Reginald's voice rang, both an accusation and a plea, as he pushed his way toward the flickering shadows, a man, propelled by desperation, yet trembling with the weight of his own secrets. Amidst the flickering shadows cast by the wavering candlelight, the atmosphere thickened as they all turned to face the figure emerging from the storm of apprehension. Suddenly, a new voice broke through the roar of fear, clear and unyielding. "It wasn't me," Martin declared, his hands raised in a last-ditch plea for innocence, while his eyes danced like a candle's flame. They flickered with urgency and fear in equal measure. "You must believe me. I couldn't harm her. Not Eleanor." Poirot's heart raced as he focused on Martin. Was it genuine remorse or feigned innocence? Then who? Who among us would raise a hand against her? The words left his lips like a challenge, electrifying the silence that hung heavy in the air. He examined Martin's demeanor, noting the slightest twitch in his jaw and the clenching of his hands, signs of anxiety that hinted at deeper truths. Enough! Lady Montgomery's voice sliced through the tension like a blade, and the vacillating candlelight threw haunting patterns across her pale visage. If we are ever to unveil this horror, we must confront the reality of our actions. I cannot stand by, she gasped, tears brimming in her eyes, not knowing the truth. Her raw vulnerability seemed to usher in an unsettling intimacy, drawing all eyes to the trembling figure. Behind her, the corner of the room held another shadow, an indeterminate figure draped in darkness. Greta, the enigmatic maid, eyes flashing with an eagerness that seemed out of place in such a moment of despair. "No one is innocent here," she murmured, her voice a serpentine hiss. "We all harbor secrets." The accusing gaze shifted to her, unexpected but not entirely unwarranted. Poirot's instincts kicked in. With the tempest of emotions swirling around him, he focused on the threads that may lead to the body beneath the floor. "Secrets, yes," he replied, his voice cool and cutting through the chaos as he fixed his gaze on Greta. "Yet, do tell us, what do you know of Eleanor's findings? You tread closer to truth than idle speculation." Greta froze for an instant, the stark realization that she stood at the precipice of confession, hanging in the air like a noxious fog. The flicker of resolve faltered in her eyes. She straightened. There was something," she stammered, as though words alone could escape the gravity that threatened to drag her under. Something she found hidden in plain sight, inside the manor, beneath its very walls. A ripple passed through the group. Poirot could feel the quickening of hearts, the shared curiosity mixing ominously with fear. "What did she find?" he pressed, each syllable steeped in urgency. "And why did you not come forward before?" Greta's voice cracked, a sound that blended innocence with guilt, as she leaned forward, pushing back her dark hair. "I only wanted to protect her. Protect all of you." Her eyes darted nervously between the group, seeking shelter in their incredulity. Eleanor had stumbled upon a ledger, a family record that was never meant to see light. It spoke of debts, of betrayals, of blood. "What sort of blood?" Reginald interjected sharply, the color draining from his face. "You cannot mean—" "The blood of your father," Greta fired back, her tone spiked with accusation, "of deeds long buried. Eleanor feared for her life, for ours. She knew the price of the secrets held within these walls." "You lie!" Lady Montgomery lashed out, her voice icily furious, a thin veneer of control barely masking her terror. "You are twisting truths to suit your own ends. Eleanor is dead, and we do not have to listen to your fanciful tales." But Poirot, suddenly still, felt an ember of understanding kindle in his mind. "Let us not dismiss this matter. It warrants investigation," he stated, moving with fluid purpose towards the tempered wood of the door that barely separated them from the horrors beneath. "But if secrets dwell in this manner, then surely they are meant to be transformed from myth into certainty. Reginald, can you bear witness to what has been concealed?" Reginald's breaths were labored, his mind racing to comprehend the tumultuous entanglement through which they were now wading. "I cannot," he gasped, the anxiety bubbling over as he clutched his head in despair. "We must gather ourselves. The past is best left unturned." Poirot made no move to quell the brewing storm, fully aware that now was the moment to magnify the pressures that threatened to fracture their fragile alliances. "Let us see then, Lady Montgomery. You seem skilled at maintaining appearances. What hidden truths shelter you, my dear?" A shift in her expression, a flash of something deep within, stirred Poirot into sharper clarity as he caught a glimpse of her denial weaving through her panic. Eleanor. She was obsessed, trailing shadows, thinking she could reclaim the Forsaken. She must have provoked them. Then we know where to look. Martin's voice was strained now, belying a new layer of tension as he moved towards her. The ledger, as you mentioned, holds the key, does it not? Enough, came a voice made from silence, a sinister secret intertwining with tension. Enough of this. It was Greta, yet there was something else now in her eyes, a glimmer of resoluteness, hinting at the web of facades in which they had all entwined themselves, each one contributing to their shared fate. And in that moment, as the air thickened with impending revelation and agony, an unclassifiable sound, a whisper of malice, slipped through the cracks of their fraught deliberation, provoking the air throbbing with palpable foreboding. Truths will rise, but at what cost? The words echoed eerily as she turned, the flickers of candlelight casting grotesque shapes upon her form, the grisly spectre of fate now bearing down. Suddenly, she lunged towards a shadow, a concealed doorway previously unnoticed until now, and the room held its breath as it momentarily flickered at the edges of understanding. Poirot's heart raced as the truth wrapped tightly around him like a serpent. "Greta, what do you mean to imply?" His voice, steadier than his heart, demanded clarity. But just as it appeared she might finally unveil the tenebrous designs weaving through the family's cracks, a deafening crash interrupted, shaking the very foundations of their gathering. The door shuddered violently under the weight of unseen forces, a pervasive darkness seeping nearer like a smokescreen blurring the lines of reality. And at that very moment, something shifted in the air around them. A threat had emerged, and the invisible strings tying them together threatened to snap. In that split second of impending chaos, Poirot's senses flared. The pieces were close, but the game was escalating faster than he could have anticipated. The veil of truth hung suspended as they witnessed shadows waiting to pounce. Someone, perhaps, was about to rise above the din, and it was unclear who would survive the inevitable unveiling of long-buried horrors. The earth trembled, not just beneath their feet, but within their hearts. Chapter 12. The final puzzle piece. A scream, piercing and raw, erupted from the depths of the cellar, mingling with the now turbulent air like a sentient cry for help. Poirot instinctively stepped back, the candlelight flickering wildly in response to the sudden surge of energy emanating from the concealed darkness. The intensity of the moment coiled around him, each heartbeat synchronized with the impending chaos. It was a moment most chilling, a prelude to the unveiling of long-buried truth that lay just out of reach. The echo of that scream morphed into a chorus of despair, resonating through the marrow of the manor. "Eleanor!" Reginald gasped, his eyes wide with dawning horror as the shadows writhed and twisted, seeking to consume him whole. "Stay back!" Greta's voice was electrified with panic. She stumbled backward, glancing nervously at the already thin veil separating them from whatever horror lurked below. Poirot's mind raced, passing the raw emotions of the moment as he forced himself to remain calm amidst the chaos. "We must not succumb to fear," he urged, positioning himself in front of Reginald, the fragile composure in the room threatening to unravel entirely. "What have you uncovered, Greta? Speak now, for the weight of truth cannot be borne in silence." The maid trembled, her features painted in ghostly shades by the flickering light, but as she opened her mouth, no words came forth, only a series of muffled gasps, as if the very air had conspired to choke her voice. The silence felt like a shroud, heavy and oppressive. Then, just as swift and relentless as the storm outside, the sounds of shuffling emerged from the cellar, clawing at the edges of their sanity. "The ledger," Greta whispered finally, her voice strained yet resolute. "It holds more than accounts. Things about your family that no one should ever know." "Enough," Lady Montgomery interjected with newfound authority that sliced through the tension, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her facade. "If there are truths hidden, then let us have them." Her eyes darted toward Poirot, beseeching him for guidance, as if he alone held the answer to the spectral horrors unfolding. "Tell us, my dear," Poirot demanded softly, his eyes locked onto hers, inviting confidence as he sought the truth beneath her layers of distress. "What secrets reside in that ledger? What do you know truly? You harbor anxieties of your own, do you not?" I feared for Eleanor's safety." Lady Montgomery's emotional dam broke, tears spilling down her cheeks, glistening like jewels in the gaslight's glow. She insisted on uncovering the past, digging deeper until all the bones of our family lay bare, and in doing so, she threatened someone's monstrous peace. As if summoned by her confession, a sudden crack resonated like lightning, jolting the manor's very bones. The door rattled, quaking under an unseen weight. Poirot's instincts ignited. He felt the tension crackling in the air, the atmosphere thick with foreboding. "What is it that lies beyond that door?" he muttered, almost to himself. Then the room erupted as the door burst open, revealing another figure emerging from the abyss. Martin, face contorted in a mixture of relief and dread. "We must leave. Now. It's not safe anymore." His voice trembled as he stumbled back into the parlor, the candlelight casting a wild dance across his gaunt features. "You don't understand. They've come." "Them," Poirot echoed, the word twisted with incredulity. "Who are they, Martin? Is it your shadow that haunts you, or merely the weight of your choices?" "I never meant to," he began, but as he glanced at the others, something flickered in his expression, a shadow of guilt or a deeper fear. It was that split-second gaze, an admission written in the agony on his face, that sent Poirot's mind racing down avenues layered with dread. "Greta's information may present a direction," he exclaimed, capturing their attention. "Everyone in this room holds a fragment of the truth, yet no one has been able to piece it together." A pause, filled with tension, hung heavy in the air. Poirot felt the stirrings of revelation within him. "Martha, you mentioned danger. Yet this ledger could also implicate you, could it not? The secrets it harbors may very well reveal your hidden motivations." "No," Martin protested too vehemently, his hand instinctively moving to shield himself as if Poirot's words held physical weight. "I loved her. I would never—" His anguish was palpable, a visceral tension prickling the air around them. Was his love genuine, or veiled beneath layers of convenient deception? Love, or a means to an end? Lady Montgomery interjected sharply, her composure cracking under the strain. "We are all entangled in this web spun by Eleanor's inquiries. What of you, Greta?" Her voice rose to a crescendo, each accusation threading the atmosphere with fraying tempers. "What part did you play in this twisted tale? You've shown us your care, yet have you acted against it?" "Stop!" Reginald's voice cut through the chaos, a plea tinged with desperation. "We are not animals driven to madness. There is a semblance of decency among us, is there not?" Yet the light of reason flickered, suffocated by the oppressive shadows gathering at the edges of their fears. Poirot's mind raced, fitfully aligning every word, every twitch of body language, every failing nerve in their arguments. Within the room's suffocating heat, he sensed the inception of truth beginning to crystallize. But the forces at play were darker. Like storm clouds brewing overhead, the brunt of a tempest loomed. Unable to ignore the unsettling feeling gnawing at him, Poirot edged toward the doorway, determined to expose the horror that lay below. As he reached for the light switch, an unearthly booming thrummed through the manor, no longer a murmur. It was an unrelenting cry that sent shivers skittering up his spine. Every candle extinguished in an instant, plunging them into darkness, forcing them into a singularity of breath and shadow. "You have grown too close, Poirot," a voice echoed from the abyss, unmistakably familiar, yet warped by an unseen force, a haunting blend of past regrets and foreboding challenges. "Who are you?" Poirot called into the void, stepping back into the group. The shadows that coalesced seemed alive, pulsating with danger, as dread pooled within him like quicksand. "If you seek the truth, Monsieur Poirot, then prepare for the price," the voice taunted, reverberating with malice, before the breath of night enveloped the room entirely. The air thickened, and Poirot could scarcely whisper as the echoes of the spectral voice lingered. "What have I awakened?" As the silence descended, a loud crash rang out from the cellar, the sound of something or someone beyond the threshold, forcibly breaking free. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Truth was clawing its way to the surface, but the struggle for release came at a dreadful cost. An unseen tension hovered like a knife's edge. Something terrible was about to be revealed, and in that moment, Poirot understood. He was no longer just unraveling a mystery. He was inching toward a precipice from which none might return.